Unit 6, Multiple Choice. Exercise 6.01.
The 1956 Olympic Games were held in Melbourne from 22nd of November until 8th of December and were a huge success, launching the Australian city, and to some extent the whole country, on the world stage with a whole new image. The bid process for winning the Games started in around 1948, the year of the London Olympic Games. After that, two former Lord Mayors of Melbourne, convinced that their city could cope with the demands of staging the world's most famous sporting festival, decided to lobby intensively on behalf of the city they love, funding the trips from their own pockets, without even asking for help from local taxpayers, local businesses or the Olympic Committee. They set off on a long drawn-out tour that was eventually to take in 15 countries, concentrating particularly on Commonwealth and European countries. When they were lobbying members of the Olympic Committee, who would be voting to decide which city secured the 1956 Games, the main advantages they pushed were the city's planned new international airport, the large amount of space available to stage the Olympics, and the agreeable South Hemisphere climate. But it was the latter two factors that really swayed the Olympic Committee voters. At the Games themselves, Australian athletes achieved extraordinary success, third in the medal table only to the USA and USSR, eclipsing sporting superpowers like East Germany. The Melbourne Olympic Games were a genuine sporting success and of long-term benefit to the city itself. The event proved to be a magnet for hundreds of thousands of visitors during and after the Games, with the city's already excellent transport infrastructure impressing people from all over the world. The Games were also an exceptional advertisement for Australian goods and services and the tourism industry.
Exercise 6.02.
Before we finish assembly, just a word about the job seeker services the school offers. As you know, as students of vocational courses, you have exclusive access to our job seeker service. You're required to find a part-time job as part of your skills in the community course, and we provide you with an information service. You have probably already seen the information desk, where you can find the list of jobs next to room 101, just along the corridor from the Careers Advisors office. The Job Seeker Centre, as we call the desk, is staffed. That's open for business from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. The Job Seeker Centre is open almost every weekday of the year. Understandably, on New Year's Day it will be closed, but otherwise the service is available any time during the school holidays. But we found there's no point being there during everyone's favourite time of the year, exam time, so we give it a break then. The information desk has cards with limited information about jobs, but you won't find a list of qualifications or the hourly rates there. Don't forget, most of these jobs don't require many qualifications. The cards feature a brief description of what the job involves and the hours the employer wants you to work. The jobs advisor at the desk can give you limited help. Once you've taken a card, though, the ball's in your court. You have to take down the information and call the prospective employer yourself. We can't hold your hand through that. Don't expect to find your dream job immediately. Hollywood acting jobs are pretty thin on the ground, and even the jobs you might expect to be readily available, like hotel work and cleaning jobs, will most likely prove elusive, to say the least. Our experience tells us that you're most likely to secure employment helping to look after children or manual labour. Not quite the cushiest of numbers, but they're good experience anyway.
Exercise 6.03.
Last call for passenger Roberts flying to Bangkok on flight BD221. Please note your 14:35 flight is due to depart in 10 minutes. Please go to departure gate 42 immediately. Starline flight number SL525S, flying to Kiev, departing at 14:55, is now boarding at gate 8. This is an announcement for passengers on Moondance Airlines flying to Chengdu. Flight MA354 departing at 15:30. Your flight has been delayed and will now be taking off at 16:20. Please go to gate 45 30 minutes before the rescheduled departure time. Announcing the departure of Moldavia Airlines Flight VD624 flying to St. Petersburg. Would passengers please proceed to gate 39? This flight is now boarding for takeoff at 16:10. Scheduled arrival is at 20:10. We regret to announce that due to rerouting to avoid inclement weather conditions, the flight is now scheduled to arrive at 20:40. Airport announcement to all passengers. Please make sure you pay your airport tax before going through immigration. This can be paid at the airport tax counters or at machines just to the left of immigration. Airport tax for international flights is $9 and $5 for domestic flights. Thank you.
Exercise 6.04.
In the US, they call it soccer, but in most of the rest of the English-speaking world, it's football. It's easily the most popular team sport in the world. In Britain, the top clubs have all-seater stadiums, so even if fans want to stand and watch the game, they have to sit down to watch. The largest stadiums, built to high safety regulations, can hold more than 70,000 spectators, but most are much smaller than this. Out of season, special events like concerts are held in some of the stadiums, and large companies can rent stadium facilities, such as meeting rooms, bars and restaurants. Most British football stadiums do not have a running track around the football pitch. Football fans who come along to support their team like the fact that they can sit very close to the action. In some stadiums, when a player takes a corner or throw in, the players can almost be touched by the spectators who are sitting near the edge of the pitch. Which is prohibited. If you want to go to every home game of a top club, you probably need to buy a season ticket, which is a ticket for all the home games of a club, although not the away games. Most home games of top football clubs are nearly always sold out. If you're lucky enough to get a ticket, match days are fantastic. You join the crowds of fans on the way to the stadium, and when you go through the turnstiles, you can enjoy the atmosphere as the reporters take their places in the press stand, the commentators get ready at their microphones, and the fans get ready to cheer their side on, sing a few football songs, and watch the match. At half-time, you might have a drink and a meat pie, and if the queue is not too long, you might be able to go to the toilet. If you can't get hold of a ticket, you can normally watch the match in a pub. Many pubs show top-flight matches on a big screen or big-screen TV, so you can relax with a pint or two of beer and watch the game.
Exercise 6.05.
Hi there, and welcome to Cross Creek Riding School. Before we go over to the horses, I can see you're all itching to get riding, which is great. We need to go over a few ground rules. If you break any of these basic rules, you will either hurt yourself, or if you don't, I will most likely throw you off the course. I realize that sounds a little unfriendly, but I want to impress on you from day one the importance of following these basic rules. If you do, you most certainly will be safe and enjoy your riding to the full. That's the purpose of the rules, however mean I may sound. If you don't follow the rules, the chances are you will be injured or cause an injury, and if I catch you ignoring basic rules, that's the end of your time at my school. My rule number 1 is clear and simple. Always respect the horses. They are wonderful creatures, and as a rider, you should be looking to form a partnership with your horse. If you want to totally dominate a horse, then you need to go to another riding school. That's not what we teach. The next rule is really 2 rules. Always wear a helmet and boots when riding, unless you want to maximize damage to yourself if you fall off. And always wear boots when you are anywhere near a horse, unless you want to lose a few toes. These rules go for all riders. Rule 3 is more of an observation. You will fall off. I hope you don't fall off immediately, but someday, sometime, probably when you least expect it, you will fall off a horse. Even the greatest riders in the world can tell you painful stories of taking a tumble. You don't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. It's that simple. Another rule is that when you're around horses, particularly if they are even slightly agitated or uptight, walk closer to the horses rather than farther away, especially if you're behind them. You may think you're a long way behind a horse, but unless you're more than 3 times the distance of the horse's body away, he or she can still kick you. It is not a pleasant experience. I learned the hard way, unfortunately. This next rule should be common sense. No screaming, no yelling, no shouting anywhere near the horses or this riding school. Keep your voice down. You do not want to shock the horses, and I do not like shouting either. You might think that the most common mistakes people make are technical ones, such as mounting the horse incorrectly, sitting with your weight in the wrong place, or whatever. Actually, the mistake you see most from people who are new to horses, or who don't want to learn how to behave with or around horses, is that they just don't pay attention to the horse. Remember, however well you know your horse, he or she can still be unpredictable, so you have to keep an eye on them. What we are aiming to do is to teach you what you need to have the confidence and ability to get out there and really enjoy that amazing feeling of being in partnership with a horse out in the open air. That's my final rule, and it's probably the most important one overall. Enjoy it. Riding is fun.
Exercise 6.06.
Isambard Kingdom Brunel was born in 1806 and died in 1859. His father was a French engineer who worked on major projects in Britain. Isambard was born in Portsmouth and went to school near Brighton, also on the south coast of England. He spent 2 years studying in Paris, after which he returned to England to work with his father, notably on the Thames Tunnel, which was finished in 1843. Isambard designed some famous bridges which were at the cutting edge of technology at the time, including the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which was completed posthumously in 1864. Brunel's genius was not confined to structures going under and over rivers. In his astonishingly productive career, he designed several world-famous ships. At the age of only 31, in 1837, Brunel saw the launch of the Great Western, a steamship which regularly crossed the Atlantic Ocean. As well as ships, he was also involved in redesigning and rebuilding a number of docks in Britain to cope with the enormous amount of goods transported to and from around the world. When he was still in his 20s, Brunel became the chief engineer for the Great Western Railway and oversaw the construction of large numbers of technically astounding tunnels, bridges and viaducts. Brunel was possibly one of the greatest engineers of all time, and much of his work is still visible in reality and in old photographs, and many of his projects are still working today, testament to a truly remarkable talent backed up by seemingly limitless reserves of drive and energy.
Exercise 6.07.
As flying long distances becomes ever more common, long flights with young children are something parents have to cope with more often than perhaps they'd like to. Flights can be unbearable because when kids get bored, they can be simply too much to handle. However, there are some ways of making those long plane journeys at least tolerable, and possibly even fun. I should just mention I collected all these tips from my friends and fellow passengers who'd read about the subject in books and magazines and found the advice useless, and in fact learned from their own experience, and after one particularly nightmarish trip to the States, which I shall never forget as long as I live. If you know you're going to be flying long distance with your kids, book early and let the airline know that you will have young children with you. The chances are they will give you seats in a row all by yourselves, which means that you can get settled in and the kids have a place to play, rest, and you hope, sleep. With your own row, you don't have to keep such a beady eye on the toys as you might otherwise, and the aircrew know exactly where your little terrors belong. You might be tempted to book yourselves into or try to blag yourselves seats in business class. Comfortable seats, a vast array of film and video game entertainment, and wonderful food, including ice cream and other goodies, should keep your little darlings happy for a long time. Personally, I'd advise against this, even if the peace and quiet might seem like a bargain. Other business class passengers might well be far from delighted at being near your loved ones, and if they make a noise, it is far more noticeable in the posh section. Should your children lose their cool, and you're not coping well with the situation, don't forget the aircrew. The stewards and stewardesses are far more experienced than you are in terms of dealing with temper tantrums at high altitudes. And not only children's temper tantrums. Do not by any means be too embarrassed to accept their help. Another tip I strongly recommend.
Exercise 6.08.
Polygamy refers to the practice of a man being married to more than one woman at the same time. Approximately a quarter of the world's people live in societies where husbands are entitled to have more than one wife. Before the spread of the Industrial Revolution, marrying several women was not an uncommon way for a man to accumulate a respectable fortune, thanks to the dowries that came with matrimony. Sometimes the wives did retain some financial independence, either by continuing to work or thanks to a share of the dowry. The husband generally had very little to do with the everyday family routine, with the wife or wives taking care of the essential duties required for the successful upkeep of the household. With the rise of universal education and the progress being made in terms of equal rights for women and men, the economic responsibility of polygamy, the practice of one husband having many wives, and having the associated large number of children, is making the prospect less and less desirable, whether or not it is socially acceptable. For centuries now there have been arguments about the pros and cons of men having several wives, but generally, in industrialized countries, the practice is socially unacceptable, if not illegal, everywhere. There are some societies where women are the ruling sex, and they have several husbands. In the animal kingdom, many species are polygamous, and it is thought that this is nature's way of trying to ensure the survival of the particular species.
Exercise 6.09.
Biology is the study of life. It stems from the Greek words bios and logos. Bios means life and logos means word or study. A couple of decades ago, in the public mind, the science of biology was concerned with the study and classification of animals and other living things. It was, and still is by some, known as a soft science, an option at school that was of general interest but no match for the rigorous academic challenges of physics and chemistry. Those in the know knew better, of course, but widespread public opinion is often at variance with the truth. Recently, however, modern biology has risen to become somewhat of a Hollywood star of the sciences, and now garners enormous amounts of publicity in all media, primarily due to its power to affect our everyday lives in the same way physics and chemistry recognizably do. On a different level, advances in the field of biological science are affecting the way we view our very existence in the way that discoveries by astronomers did in Europe many centuries ago. The mapping of the human gene and the cloning of animals, most famously Dolly the sheep, have grabbed headlines and are turning a whole new generation on to what used to be seen as a soft option. Admittedly, genetically modified foods are seen by many as worrying because they may be damaging biodiversity. But solving some of the most significant challenges faced by the planet today are seen as inextricably involving biology and biologists. How to feed a growing global population, coping with worldwide epidemics such as flu, malaria, and AIDS, developing biofuels, which may slow the destruction of the ozone layer, and a host of other issues are now very much in the public consciousness. I would also argue that biology, as well as being vitally important, is also astonishingly beautiful and intriguing. Will the mysteries of life ever be solved? Personally, I doubt it, since life involves constant and fascinating change.
Exercise 6.10.
Towards the end of the last decade, the Philippines, the East Asian country comprising the Philippine Islands, was going through somewhat of a crisis in terms of the declining number of tourists coming to spend their holidays there and, more pertinently, their money. The perceived threat of terrorism was putting off large numbers of tourists from Western countries, particularly France, Germany, and the USA. An economic downturn in Germany was partly to blame for the drop in the number of tourists, but it was clear that, whatever the reasons, the Philippines needed to change their marketing strategy for attracting tourists in the large numbers essential to maintain the economic growth the country was aiming at. The country's tourist authority took a conscious decision to change the focus of their marketing strategy. They decided to concentrate more resources on selling the benefits of a holiday trip to the Philippines to countries closer to home than the rich European nations and the USA. They decided to examine the trends in the European and American holiday market. People there were not coming to the Philippines on their holidays because they were staying closer to home, so the Europeans were travelling within Europe and the Americans were going to neighbouring Mexico and Canada in large numbers. This analysis led to an elementary change in their marketing focus. On the assumption that the same trend would prevail in Asia, the tourist authority started strong marketing campaigns in other Asian countries, in particular in China and Korea. These advertising campaigns were accompanied by a change in tone of their regular TV commercials on global news channels, with the new commercials depicting the Philippines as a haven of peace, tranquility, and, crucially, of safety. The new commercial strategy paid off very rapidly. In 2002, the number of tourists from South Korea jumped by 39% compared to 2001, whilst the equivalent figure for Chinese visitors was 47%. Whilst wealthy Europeans and Americans were fairly familiar with the concept of relaxing on a beach after a long night of partying hard in a bar, this sort of holiday was relatively new and glamorous for Chinese tourists, who have very much taken to it and continue to flock to the Philippines in huge numbers. The more relaxed atmosphere and lifestyle of the Philippines are a real draw.